Looking to get ahead right from the start? Well, here are some differentials for you. Right, and so the first player I wanted to talk about is Raheem Sterling. Now, if he was playing for Man City in the form that he was in a few seasons ago, 7 million would be absolutely incredible value. During his time at Man City, he averaged 0.7 expected returns per 90 throughout his whole time there. And you can see last season it was just 0.43. Obviously dropped off last season playing for Chelsea, but I think we can safely say that there weren't any real players in that Chelsea team that performed well. Certainly from like an attacking stats perspective, likes of Mount, well, Aubameyang is not even worth talking about, is he? But they all regressed, including obviously Sterling. And just a general point about him, he's got 226 goals and assists in 339 games that he played for Man City. So if that was any like player you were looking at on Sky Sports before a game or whatever, you think, oh my God, that's unbelievable. And that's Raheem Sterling. So if you can find that form at Chelsea again, 7 million is an absolute steal. And particularly under Pochettino, you got to feel Chelsea are going to have a bit of a transformation. If there's any manager that can turn the boat around that Chelsea are at the moment, it's got to be Pochettino. So I'm personally not going to start with Sterling, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on him throughout the season. And if you want to take a bit of a risk, be a bit punty from the off, I think he could be a great option because we all know what his upside is. And if he can deliver that, he's going to be a great differential. Next up is a player that is currently in my draft, and that's Heung-min Son at 5.6% ownership. Now, one point we can definitely say about Heung-min Son is that he's absolutely nailed to start in that Spurs team. What we didn't know until recently is last season he spent quite a lot of the season playing with a hernia. Now, I haven't had one myself, but people that I've spoken to that have had one have said it's literally one of the most painful conditions you can have. So for him to even score 10 Premier League goals with something like that going on is pretty incredible. And no one forgets, but a couple of seasons ago, he won the Golden Boot, right? He scored 23 goals in the 21-22 season. And if he can recreate any of that sort of form, even if he gets close to that, 9 million is an absolute steal for him. And just in general, looking at the sort of mean returns he gets in the Premier League, it's around 0.6 expected returns per 90, which is slightly better than the Arsenal midfielders did last season. So another point really to talk about with Son as well. Obviously, Kane is linked with multiple clubs. I don't think he's going to go to Real Madrid. Bayern Munich are looking at him. I've got a feeling Man United are going to be interested still as well. And one thing about Son is his stats actually improve when Kane isn't in the team. That might be contrary to what you might think, but he does genuinely get more attacking returns when Kane isn't in the team. And of course, when Kane isn't in the team, he'll be taking the penalties as well. But that's a bit of speculation about Kane out of the way. I think even if Kane's in the team, 9 million is a very good price for Heung-min Son. Next up, I've gone for Jarrod Bowen, and it's a similar story really with him as it was with Heung-min Son. Back in the 21-22 season, he had a really good affair. 12 goals, 10 assists in 36 games is a really good season. And last season, he obviously regressed quite a lot, but I don't think he played too badly. And I feel like his form sort of rekindled towards the back end of the season, just as West Ham started improving in terms of their performances. And obviously scored the winning goal in the European final. For me, I think that kind of goal and the form he was in towards the end of last season, I think is going to be a catalyst for this season, and he's going to have a good one. One thing to say is he's absolutely nailed to start for West Ham. The odd time he does get rotated, but last season, I think he started 36 games and then came off the bench in a couple, but he featured in all 38 games last season, despite West Ham, balancing all the national cups and Europe. And yeah, I think if he can find that form in 21-22, you've got to say of the 7 million mids, he's probably one of the best. And just in general, I feel like West Ham, obviously they're going to lose Declan Rice, which could have an impact. But the middle of last season, they really were in a dip where they were properly in the relegation zone and in trouble. But they seemed to climb their way out of that. And that was partly due to some of Bowen's returns. And just in general, I feel like they're going to kick on. If they sell Rice in good time, spend the money well, I think they could do well next season. So Jarrod Bowen, it's definitely a good differential. Okay, next up, I've gone for Luis Diaz. Now, we all know the upside that he provides, and 7.5 million, I think, is a great price. Looking at his ownership, 6.4%, so you can definitely count him as a differential. One thing I would say is, just in general, last season, we looked at his stats last year. He scored 4 goals, got 3 assists in the Premier League, priced him at 8 million, and he was a very popular pick. I think his ownership was in and around 30% at the start of last season. In my opinion, I know they've got Jota and they've got Nunez, but I just feel like Luis Diaz is going to be the starting left winger for them. And yeah, if you can pay 7.5 million for someone that's going to start in that Liverpool front three, I think it's incredible value. And just in general, Liverpool didn't have their best season last year. Across the front line, they didn't score as many goals and they conceded more. Just in general, though, I feel like with the midfield signings they've made, Szoboszlai, if that's how you pronounce it, and McAllister, I think that's really going to improve them as a team, both defensively and going forwards. Those guys are going to create more chances for the front three, and obviously Luis Diaz if he gets in the team. So in general, I think Liverpool are really going to step it up again next season, and Luis Diaz could be a good option, especially at that ownership. Now, Pedro Porro is a bit of an interesting one. I think this is probably the roguish shout of them all at the moment, but he's likely to be starting for Spurs next season, as he did towards the end of last year. And just looking at Spurs in general, they've got a real lack of fullbacks in their team. Looks like Perisic is on his way out. Sessegnon's picked up an injury. So yeah, they're looking a bit low on numbers. So you got to think he's going to be nailed in the team. Only played 15 games last season, but when he did, his underlying numbers were right up there, even better than Trent Alexander-Arnold. One point about him is the new manager. He played a 4-3-3 at Celtic, and while the Spurs team is probably built to play in like a 3 at the back formation, I think he's going to turn things around a little bit and start playing a 4-3-3, which obviously Porro did so well last year because he was a wing back, and the Spurs wing backs absolutely bomb forward. That might be a bit less if he's playing a bit more defensive in a fullback position. And yeah, I just say in general, Spurs' weakness last season was the defensive. Postecoglou can get them defending well, or at least keeping the ball a bit more so they don't have to defend as much. I think he could be an even better option, but I just think with those attacking stats he got last season for a price of 5 million, reasonable opening fixtures. Obviously that United game in there is a bit of a problem, but Brentford and Bournemouth either side is okay. I feel like he could be a good differential. And last but not least is a player that I mentioned in my cheap strikers video, and that's Wissa of Brentford. Currently coming in at 6 million and 3.6% owned. I think he's a great option, particularly because Tony's not in the team. So you got to think he's going to start. He featured, maybe some of it, well, a lot of it was off the bench, but he featured in all 38 games last season. And obviously most of them were when Tony was on the pitch and he came off of the bench. He still managed to score 7 goals and get 3 assists. His underlying numbers are brilliant. 0.56 expected returns per 90. That's actually better than Evan Ferguson got, who's a popular striker, I would say, at this price. So he's got better stats than Evan Ferguson. In my opinion, he's probably more nailed to start. And yeah, just in general, I feel like his returns are going to improve when Tony's not in the team. I think his returns were nothing to be sniffed at, but they were mostly with Tony on the pitch. So without Tony, you got to think the ball's going to come to him more, and he's got a good chance of getting some more returns. But yeah, just in general, I think of the 6 million strikers, he's probably my favourite at the moment. And to be only 3.6% owned, he's a differential too. Well, and that's the end of the video. A quick little chat there that I would say is a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm not the usual kind of guy to go for differentials, especially from the start of the season, but I do think these guys are worth talking and making a video about because they could be good options in your team if you are looking to get ahead from the back. 'Cause that's what the game's all about at the end of the day, playing it your own way and having fun doing so. So if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Let me know in the comments what you think of some of those picks. I wouldn't be offended if you disagree. I think I say that in every video, but FPL, it's all about people with different opinions. Otherwise, we'd all have the same team. So yeah, it'd be interesting to know what you think in the comments, and you can subscribe to my channel just there to see some more videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.